Hello, and welcome to another episode of Horizons. This program is coming to you from the Lowell line in downtown Lowell, Massachusetts. Your host for this episode is Mark. Today's guest is Rob Kanzer. Rob is a life coach, certified mediator, crisis intervention practitioner, and president of Rob Kanzer. He volunteers for the Lab Training Let's talk with Rob.
Rob, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us today.
Maria, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I like your sparkling smile.
Thank you very much. So, Rob, can you give myself and our listeners a bit of a background about yourself?
Sure. I'm 58 years old. I grew up in Weston, Massachusetts. I had both a privileged upbringing and in some ways a nightmare upbringing, which I think has informed me and shaped me to be the man that I am. On the beautiful side of life, healthy, happy, carefree, with two professional, intelligent, loving parents, a neighborhood where there were a gang of kids, where we could play sports and run free. But all was not well in paradise because the nightmare side of my life was my mother had acute schizophrenia, serious mental illness, which prevented her from being present to us. So there was always an undercurrent of worry that if my two younger brothers were fighting, that tension would make Mommy go away. We would never say in those days, in the 50s and 60s, the mental hospital. We would always spoke in very euphemistic terms. So it was McLean's Hospital. But I didn't really know as a child what was going on. But I felt compelled to make sure that my brothers were communicating well. And my father was a master communicator, owning his own advertising firm on Newbury Street. You probably remember way back in the days when Bobby Orr was flying high with the Bruins. And
I do.
They teamed up with Bay Banks. So my father's advertising agency conducted that campaign. And there were a lot of ways in which my father got a lot of accolades for his amazing creative communication work in the business world. But he was a workaholic, so many times it kind of fell to me to be the surrogate parent at home. And I think those combinations of things, moving my body and playing sports, but also being preoccupied that everybody's okay, and communicating compassion really became kind of the fundamental ways in which I formed as a child.
Very good. And how about school? Can you tell us a little bit about your education?
Well, I think school and formal education is responsible for part of my success. So I'll tell you about that, and then if you want, you can ask me about the non-academic schooling, which is also important. My formal education, I went to perhaps the finest public school system in the state of Massachusetts. I went to the Weston Public Schools. Very creative, a lot of liberal arts, a lot of encouragement with sports and freedom of expression. And at the University of Hartford, where I attended college as an undergraduate, I studied human communication dynamics. And there were a lot of extracurricular activities, not too unlike what we're doing right this minute.
Correct.
I had a chance to have my own radio program where I interviewed people. I enjoyed that a lot. I was also the chairperson of the video committee, which meant I could go around campus interviewing people on video, again, in this kind of personal style. Also, there was a television program where I got to host, interview, talking, and listening. So that really, as an undergraduate, shaped me in very fine ways. And as a graduate student at the University of Massachusetts, I received a certificate in mediation and dispute resolution. So those are sort of the formal sides of my education. I've since done a lot on the informal side. In 1981, I was living in Cambridge, and I was walking down Standish Street where I lived, and on the telephone pole in a orange 8.5 by 11 poster, I saw written the words, "Would you like to learn compassionate communication? Would you like to understand the power of how Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi achieved what they tried to achieve?" And I was absolutely smitten and excited. What is this? It's called Nonviolent Communication, Marshall Rosenberg, PhD, clinical psychologist, is coming to the New Words bookstore at 186 Hampshire Street in Cambridge. So this is in 1981. And I thought, what is this? I'm so fascinated. I really love communication. I've never really heard of this nonviolent communication. Because I had been very inspired by Martin Luther King, and I've been very inspired by my father, who was a very good listener. And I got to the workshop. It was a hot afternoon, and actually what happened? I absolutely hated it. It was stuffy, and what Dr. Rosenberg was asking us to do was so hard. He was saying things like, no matter what somebody does or says, no matter what they do or say, or not do or not say, either they're getting their needs met or they're not getting their needs met. And it's important to be curious and to ask people about their emotions and what they're needing. And this, as he put us through the exercises and role plays, was just incredibly difficult because it took so long. I really became impatient. Even though I was interested, I was wondering, is this really for me? This is so hard. I don't know if I have the patience to deal with people when they're treating me in a way that I think is disrespectful. I gave it my best. I stayed for the whole weekend, but I kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, oh, well, I don't know if I'm cut out to do this. And about 6 weeks later, I was living at the time with a housemate. We weren't getting along, and weeks would go by, and the tension got thicker and thicker. And then one day we were arguing again in the kitchen, and I paused and I said, wait a minute. What was that thing Dr. Rosenberg was trying to teach me? What was that? What was that? And I scrambled and I stammered and I went through the 4 steps that Dr. Rosenberg taught me. It transformed my life. In a 5-minute conversation where I employed what Dr. Rosenberg taught me, I became evangelical. Maria, I was going to all of my friends in the neighborhood. I'm having a workshop. Come learn nonviolent communication. Come over to my house. One person came. I spent the whole weekend with that person. I taught them everything that I knew. Then I had another workshop. 3 people came. And then another. And then 5 people came. And then I got excited and I said, people are responding to me even though I don't have a PhD in psychology. I have something to offer. And as I'm teaching people, I myself am the student too. We're doing it together. And I launched a business. And sitting here 33 years later with you, which is an honor and a privilege.
Thank you.
I feel absolutely inspired and in debt to all of the thousands of people that I've talked to and not only coached, but also learned from on how to be more compassionate, how to put into language ways of solving problems that ultimately meet all of our human needs.
So it was a life-changing event for you.
It really was. And it continues to be. I mean, I feel excited just talking to you about it right now.
And how did you build your business? What were the steps you went through to get where you are today?
Well, as I mentioned, I first started running these workshops where 1 person came and 3 people came. That was in my living room on the 2nd floor of my apartment in Standish Street. And it occurred to me early on, Maria, how can I reach a larger audience? And I started to approach counseling centers. I had a very idealistic view that I would work with nonprofits and I would work with people that were in the helping profession. So my very first client, they paid me $75 an hour, which I thought was
$1 million.
Oh my God, this is over the top. I am going to be rich and I can't believe they're hiring me at this price and I don't have a PhD. It was called the Vietnam Veterans Center. It was in Brighton, Massachusetts, and it was a counseling place for Vietnam vets who had trauma from being in the war, and it was a center to try to help bring compassion into the lives of these former soldiers. And I worked primarily with the counselors themselves, teaching them what I had learned from Dr. Rosenberg. What happened continued to amaze me. I thought, what do I know? I'm just this person who doesn't have a PhD, and I'm actually coaching people that do have a PhD. And yet, they're paying me, they're responding really well to it, and that was the beginning. In the ideal world, I wanted very much to work with the nonprofits. And in the early days of the 80s, just as all of this was starting to unfold, quite by accident, although it's a very happy ending, my girlfriend became pregnant. This was not a planned event, and I had to take a temporary detour from trying to build my business, because it's great getting $75 an hour in the early 80s if you have that kind of pay every day. But I only had these seminars every once in a while. And I became panicked. Oh my God, there's a child on the way. What am I going to do? How can I possibly continue my mission to coach people and teach compassionate communication and problem solving? I said, well, I've got to get work. And I started delivering newspapers for USA Today in the very early morning. So I was working from 4 in the morning in my newspaper job till 10 at night trying to build my seminar business. And it was a very stressful, difficult time. But what made it possible for me is I decided no matter what, I am going to be responsible and try to help my son come into the world in a place where there's enough resources to take care of him. So those early years were very difficult, but it turned out to be a blessing. As I describe myself as a life and business coach, I learned early on the life part, but the business part, well, I was thrust into being a newspaper distribution person, and what happened in the weeks and months that followed amazed me. In the first couple of weeks, I was ashamed of myself.
And why is that?
Here I am, a nice Jewish boy, very well educated from Weston, and what am I doing? College educated? Delivering newspapers? I was ashamed of myself until a few weeks went by and I realized, oh my goodness, I'm the only one in our group of 15 drivers that always shows up on time. I discovered that in the business world, there are very few people that actually do an outstanding job. Most workers resent their employers. They resent not getting paid, and they don't feel engaged in what they're doing. So I learned 2 amazing lessons when I delivered newspapers, which helped me build a newspaper distribution company in a very short time. With what I had learned, I built my company where I had 15 drivers working for me, delivering 40 newspapers to 5,000 locations in 150 towns in and around Boston with 4 managers and a giant warehouse, and I became financially independent.
And who knew?
Who knew that I would learn this lesson, turning my shame into appreciation?
What exactly is a life and business coach?
Most people are familiar with a coach because we're such a sports fanatic society. Everybody knows the coach is on the sidelines. He gives or she gives strategies, encouragement, and a certain rigor of discipline. Well, if you allow me to extend the metaphor, life, in a way, can be like a game. There are certain rules, but unlike sports, it's not restricted just to a playing field. Life is a game that's unfolding everywhere all the time. So as a coach with a background in counseling and compassion, my first role in the life side of life and business coaching is to pay attention. It's to listen and honor the individual, or if it's a corporate team I'm working with, the corporate culture, by just getting to know people first, not make any assumptions. Even though I've been doing this for 33 years and I've seen patterns of human behavior, I still treat every moment as if it's the first moment. And I really, sincerely, what it is that they want to achieve, I really listen. The second thing I do is I reflect it back to the person and asking them if I've understood correctly. And a lot of times people will stop and they'll say, "Hey, you're really listening to me." Or, "Oh my God, why in 5 minutes do I feel so cared and loved for when you're practically a stranger?" See, people are hungry to be heard and understood. And that's what Dr. Rosenberg was trying to teach me way back when. And believe me, Maria, it took me years to cultivate. And I think it's probably a lifelong practice. So when I say I'm a life coach, I've had plenty of life experience. I'm 58 years old. And the coaching part has to do with me first modeling the kind of compassionate listening so that people can have compassionate listening for themselves. And when they do, and when the chatter of the mind is toned down, they can be much more present to who they are and what they want to create. So as a life coach, ultimately, we're exploring how do you feel and what do you want? And a lot of times people will respond, well, I can't get what I want. I know what I want, but I can't get it. And I'll say, okay, excuse me, would you indulge me? And I'll say, what? Just for fun, just between you and me. Just try to answer the question as positively as you can. What is it that you would like? I want $1 million. Okay. You answered that very quickly. Well, yeah, I want to get out of this lousy job. And then slowly but surely I'll ask questions about the job, and then I learn about their right? Mm-hmm. It's an unraveling and a patient process. And there's a point at which the person can shift from what they don't want to what they do want. And then it's a matter of practicing staying with what you want.
For those who have just tuned in, you are listening to Maria Martin and our guest, Rob Kanzer, a life coach and president of Rob Kanzer Seminars for 30 years. Let's continue talking with Rob.
What they want and what they need, will that change as they talk to you? Do you see them shift to saying, well, I wanted A, but now after talking to you, I think I really want B?
Yes.
Does that happen often?
It happens all the time.
Now, what's the difference with coaching a person or a family opposed to a business?
Well, most businesses, especially the Fortune 500 companies that I work with, have to go through a certain protocol of proving that the tens of thousands of dollars that they're going to pay me to work with their leaders are actually going to be money well spent. It might not be tens of thousands. It might be thousands. Every project is different.
And how do you decide
how
to take on a client, whether it's a personal or business?
Well, I like variety. I love speaking. I have a seminar company, and a lot of times I'm in front of the room giving a free presentation to a corporate group or a professional association. For example, I was at the American Society for Training and Development, and they said, we'd like you to speak on conflict resolution. We're going to have 50 human resource managers in the audience from various companies. Would you be willing to give us a free talk so that our human resources people can experience, because my seminars are very interactive. It's not just me talking. We do role plays, we do written, and we take from real life. And I said, of course, I would love to. So people walk in with their coffee cups, they're dragging in the early part of the day, and before they know it, they're out of their chairs, they're clapping, they're moving, I'm getting them laughing, I'm breaking the ice with them with a little bit of fun for the first 5 or 10 minutes. And then before they know it, they're bringing real life questions into the seminar. And at every point, I may pause and say, let's review the communication steps I've taught you. Does this make sense? And they will invariably, push back a little bit. Well, I don't know if I can say that to my boss. I said, well, your boss isn't here. Let's just practice. And we'll do role plays. And I find that when we do role plays, people are absolutely enthralled. The time and space goes away and people go into the moment. And before they know it, the hour is over. And at the end of the hour, people are coming up to me afterwards and inviting me to their company.
That's excellent.
The same is true in working with individuals and families. I'm giving a workshop in Newton. I can give you my contact information at the end of the interview that's open to the public. So it doesn't have to be a professional association or a Fortune 500. I've worked with divorced families where the parents still love their children, but they need to learn how to get along under the same roof. Or there's 2 different houses. So in that case, what do? I actually hold the seminar in their living room, and the only attendees are the people in the family. It's the same set of principles, but I set it up in a custom-made way so that they can learn in the privacy of their own home.
How do you get people to maintain a positive attitude?
First of all, I think there's part of our human psyche that's addicted to drama and negativity. It's on the news, and the reason why newspapers and television programs are filled with violence and upsetting news is because it's their job to get eyeballs to the screen and eyeballs to the paper so they can sell advertising. I don't disparage any business to make money, but I would say to people, it's kind of like junk food. A little bit here and there. It's okay to have a little dessert. It's okay to have a small amount of alcohol now and again, but you don't want to make that part of your diet on an everyday massive consumption. And the same is true with media. I ask people to take a diet to reduce the amount of time they're spending watching negative TV and listening to hate talk on the radio. And to just notice what would happen if you used the 3 hours on the couch instead of that, maybe getting together with me or friends and going for a walk around Walden Pond, which I sometimes do with my clients, or a walk on the beach, or even going to the gym. I think that ultimately life and business coaching is about paying attention. So on the business side of things, if the life side is watching what we eat and watching what we consume through media, the business side is actually examining, for example, I did this for a year once, I recorded every single penny that I spent. Now at first, it was annoying, but then after a while, it became intriguing. Oh my gosh, I had no idea I spent so much money on slices of pizza. I had no idea I could get a rebate from my credit card if I switched credit cards. And what seems like $20 here and 2% there, by recording every single thing, instead of having it bouncing around in my mind, when I had it in front of me, that's what I call the referent object, proof, it made it very real to my psychology that I wasn't a victim, that I could create more financial success. And so in my business, I learned, thanks to my father, to make sure I had a bookkeeper, make sure I had a CPA, and to make sure I'm not trying to do it all on my own. And that's kind of the basis of coaching. Don't try to do it all on your own.
Which many people try to do.
Indeed.
Every day.
Yes. And no wonder we get stressed out. You know, by nature, many of us are social. People don't like to feel vulnerable. A good life and business coach does know what to do, does know how to meet people with love and respect, to make it safe for them to ask for help. And then, if they're a really successful coach, to get the person not only in the habit of asking for help, but noticing their own internal mechanism for success. Like, what makes you happy? What is success to you? And to have a coach means not a boss, not a spouse, but somebody who's neutral, somebody who is working with you to create the game that you want to play.
Now, for instance, say you have a family or a person or a business and nothing seems to be working for them. What is the next step? Do you refer them to somebody else, to another type of counseling?
I might. You know, I'm not a medical doctor. So, for example, I've had clients who are on certain kinds of medication, either for ADD or depression. I'm not qualified as a medical doctor. And if I see that my coaching isn't effective, it might be because the person isn't taking their medication. It might be because the person's consuming too much alcohol. I very much am a believer in a team approach. So I do two things. One is, I think of myself as the head coach. The other people on the coaching staff, if you will, if I could use that in quotation marks, would be the professionals, the doctors, the lawyers, the CPAs. But the other half are lay people who the person feels safe with. It might be a friend, it might be a clergy person. And so I'm very much a believer, just like a coach on a football team has specialty coaches, right? A football coach will be the head coach, but then there's a defense coach, and there's a passing coach, and there's a place kicker coach. The same is true in life and business coaching. So as we get to know each other, we cultivate a team of coaches. Even though I may be the only one that's really being paid as the official life and business coach, we absolutely want to draw on the expertise and perspectives of others.
And can you tell our listeners a little bit about the seminars that we just talked about
Sure.
briefly?
Well, as I said, most of my seminars are custom made, either for a company that wants me to come in-house, a professional association that would like me as a keynote speaker, or if somebody wants me to come to their living room or a coffee shop, I will custom make a seminar for them. There is meetup.com, a holistic health group, and they've decided to ask me to come in and present in Newton. That's going to be on January 16th, which is a Friday. And if people want more information, can I give the
Absolutely.
Contact information? Okay. So first I'll say my name and then I'll spell it. So I'm Rob Kanzer, Life and Business Coach. So that's ROBKAN for no, Z for zebra, ER. So there's 4 ways of getting in touch with me. You can go to robkanzer.com. You can go to Rob Kanzer on Facebook. You can go to Rob Kanzer on LinkedIn. Or you can send me an email, robkanzer@robkanzer.com. And is it okay if I give my cell phone number? Because that's the way in which I conduct my business.
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. So I'll say it 2 times. It's 617-491-8939. That's 617-491-8939. And many Tuesdays I'm right here in Lowell at the Lowell Association for the Blind or Life Alive Restaurant. And most Wednesdays I'm in York, Maine at either the Stage Neck Inn restaurant or some other local establishment. And on Sundays I'm at the Grog restaurant from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. in Newburyport.
You're a busy man.
And happy.
And that's what counts. So I was reading some of your website, and I was noting a lot of great testimonials on your behalf. How does that make you feel when you read them?
I love when people are happy and that I've made a contribution. I think there is no greater reward. No amount of money can compare, Maria, for me, to knowing that I've made a positive impact in somebody's life. A lot of times I will hear somebody give me some kind of statement and they'll be very excited because they tried something that I had them, I suggested to them, an approach with their spouse or their customer, their boss. And they're like, it worked, I couldn't believe it. I did what you said. I had the script in front of me while I was talking to that person on the phone. And I said, so that's terrific. Would you be willing to share that with other people? And if they say yes, I ask them to post it. And if they want to keep it private, that's great. I guess the answer to your question is I feel honored.
Very good. And what's in the future for you? Where will you be in 10 years? Do you have a life and business coach?
I have had coaches formally on and off over the years as well.
And can you leave our listeners with a positive quote or thought for the day?
The way to stay pumped up is to notice how you feel in your body when you feel good. So if you've heard anything in this broadcast, even if it was just a snippet of a sentence, and you noticed that you sat up or you leaned forward or there was a beating in your heart or there was a feeling in your gut, the wisdom that you have in your body and in your heart can be like your own coach. It's with you 100% of the time. Now, some people call this spirit. Some people call it God. Some people call it the body of wisdom. All I do is help you remember to stay in that place. So if you take one thing from this conversation is to know that your power of wisdom is already with you in your own heart. And listen to your heart.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. This was an excellent interview, and it was a pleasure meeting with you and talking to you.
Maria, I've been absolutely delighted and honored, and I'll be very happy to help in the future.
And to our listeners, see you next time. You have been listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, an affiliate station of the Talking Information Center. From all of us at the lab, we would like to thank you for listening.